What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Well, yesterday was a pretty busy day in gaming. There's a lot of stuff to go over, which does include Nintendo and Microsoft sealing the deal on Call of Duty and maybe other Xbox games going forward over the next 10 years. We'll talk about that here today. Also, we are going to be talking about a couple of big events to look forward to, one with Sony and a State of Play, and the other with the Pokemon Company and a Pokemon Presents. And we'll also be going over some new Game Pass games that were announced, with one game I think could actually benefit heavily from the service. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure you hit that like button. Helps out a ton. And if you're new here to the Spawnwave channel, make sure you subscribe down below. We're going to start today with new firmware that was announced for the Switch. That's version 16.0.0. And I mean, this should be pretty big, right? They're making that number jump from 15 to 16. Well, we can take a look at some of the patch notes here that were released by Nintendo. User nicknames that cannot be used will be replaced with 3 question marks, which can be updated from the profile settings. And then general system stability. That's pretty much it. I mean, go ahead and update your system, but not a lot there on the surface level. Of course, people are looking through the code and what was changed. It does appear that the majority is under the hood, so to speak, so we're not really going to see any tangible differences now, other than, I guess, the situation there with user nicknames. But according to Oatmeal Dome, they said the built-in browser was updated, new error messages were added. Nintendo has also created a new certificate authority, and many OS modules were modified. In this updates, changes can vary from simple recompiles with the latest SDK to actual modifications. So unfortunately for us, the end user, not a lot to go on, but who knows, maybe this is Nintendo setting things up for potential future releases. Obviously, a lot of speculation will be had going into next year with new hardware. Is this something like, oh, they're setting the groundwork for the next system? It's possible, but also most likely they just had to update some things behind the scenes. Also, we actually had some Mega Man X news. I couldn't believe it. Capcom actually acknowledged the series, and well, it's technically more Minecraft that acknowledged this. Anyway, here's the trailer for it. It's Minecraft Mega Man X DLC. Now, I will say, this is kind of a fun-looking piece of content for Minecraft. I'm not just saying that because of Mega Man X. Okay, yeah, I'm kind of saying that because I'm a Mega Man X fan. But it does look like they recreated several of the stages along with the Maverick bosses at the end that you fight in Minecraft. I don't know, I was a little surprised looking at it. It looks like a lot of work went into this. And all I can assume now is that this is obviously Capcom setting everyone up, putting the marketing push in play for Mega Man X9. That's the only thing I can think of here. Surely they wouldn't just do a Mega Man X Minecraft crossover, because actually that's exactly what Capcom would do. It's available now, so hey, if anything, I guess we got something Mega Man X related. Oh, and it does look like some sort of bundle is coming out to go alongside of the Super Mario movie. This was posted up over on Twitter from Billy, who's very good at things like the PlayStation Plus selection ahead of time. They'll leak them out. There are a lot of other retail listings as well. This is a new Nintendo Switch bundle that's going to be launched soon in Europe, and it includes the Switch console, which is red, the Super Mario Odyssey game, a digital code, and then something related to the Super Mario movie. This coming out March 10th, which is Mario Day, so that does make sense. Hard to say what would be the tie-in here for the Mario movie. I know with the previous Mario Switch, they had a case. Maybe they do a case here with, I don't know, something themed around the movie. Maybe you get a movie ticket with the system. But I think most of us figured Nintendo would do some sort of tie-in with the Switch and the movie. The idea of getting a system with a really good 3D Mario game and then something themed around the Mario movie, I guess that does seem about right for Nintendo. Not necessarily pushing the boundaries of the new game, but a new Switch bundle with a game we already had. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with Microsoft and a pretty big day that they had yesterday. A lot of talk was made about a deal that they had finalized with Nintendo, a legally binding contract, as they said. And we'll start with that, which was posted up by Brad Smith, who is the president at Microsoft. And this was posted up, 11 p.m. Over on the West Coast, so 2 a.m. Eastern time. And well, they say Microsoft and Nintendo have now negotiated and signed a binding 10-year legal agreement to bring Call of Duty to Nintendo players the same day as Xbox, with full feature and content parity, so they can experience Call of Duty just as Xbox and PlayStation gamers enjoy Call of Duty. We are committed to providing long-term equal access to Call of Duty to other gaming platforms, bringing more choice to more players and more competition to the gaming market. So first off, I think everyone needs to understand why this went out even at 2 a.m. My time. This was just ahead of their court hearing that they had in front of the European Commission, where they're trying to plead their case as to why they should be able to buy Activision Blizzard and essentially Call of Duty for nearly $70 billion. This is just something that they were pointing to heavily during that hearing, and then the eventual press conference is, look, we're trying to get it to more places. Currently, 120 million, according to Microsoft, has access to Call of Duty. Well, now we're opening it up to the entire Switch family, right? The 125 million or so systems would have access to Call of Duty, and that's happening because of us, right, and Microsoft's position. They also made a deal with NVIDIA, which you can see this one posted up by Phil Spencer on Twitter, saying, we have signed a 10-year agreement with NVIDIA that will allow GeForce Now players to stream Xbox PC games as well as Activision Blizzard PC titles, including COD, following the acquisition. We're committed to bringing more games to more people, however they choose to play. Again, all of this really coinciding with their appearance in front of the European Commission to plead their case. In fact, over on GamesIndustry.biz, Christopher Dring did a very good job, sort of with a play-by-play analysis as Brad Smith was talking to press and media and different outlets, really going line by line as new things were brought up, and a lot of it just centered around Call of Duty and all the people who now have access because of these deals they've signed. But let's go back to the Nintendo-Microsoft deal, because originally it was sort of a verbal agreement, a handshake, if you will. It wasn't a legally binding contract like apparently they have now. So for the next 10 years, there will be a Call of Duty game on the Switch. Well, on Nintendo's platform, as is said here, not necessarily the Switch. And that is a very important differentiating factor compared to if it's just like, yeah, it's going to the Switch for the next 10 years, starting as soon as we acquire Activision Blizzard. Now, let's say this wraps up as they're hoping by June of 2023. So we're not too far out now. I wouldn't expect Call of Duty to be there this year, but potentially in 2024, that would most likely be the first the return of Call of Duty to the platform since the early days of the Wii U. And people have been wondering, how are they going to get Call of Duty on the Switch? Well, we would hope by holiday 2024, we'll have at least heard of some new system from Nintendo, if it's not at least out by then, and hopefully it is. But Microsoft has several different avenues they could go here. They could obviously have a cloud version that's available using their own Azure servers, right, on the current Switch, and maybe have a native version on Nintendo's next generation platform. They could potentially whittle down a version of Call of Duty to also run on the Switch, because do we think there will be a PlayStation 4 version of Call of Duty in 2024? I think that's actually more possible than people like to think. So then you could probably take that version, cut the frame rate in half, do all kinds of stuff to it, and yeah, get it onto the Switch. Maybe not in the best form, but as long as it's there and it's content parity, technically they're holding up their end of the bargain. Now, there are many people pointing out that Brad Smith mentioned just Xbox games in general. However, after some more clarification during kind of their press briefing that they had in front of the European Commission and all this, that it was specifically Call of Duty that was being referenced here, doesn't mean that Microsoft won't look around and say, yeah, let's move more games to platforms like the Switch, as they have done in the past. But at least for now, it appears to be Call of Duty that they're talking about here. That, coupled with NVIDIA, is just working to strengthen Microsoft's case as to why they should be able to buy this and convince regulators. Man, at the end of the day, that's the biggest thing here, is they are just trying to set up a really strong foundation to get this deal pushed across the line. And in this case, hey, Nintendo, they'll just benefit. They're like, okay, sure, we'll take Call of Duty, why not? And in Microsoft's case, they can then use Nintendo to showcase that they are trying to help everyone and get Call of Duty and other Activision Blizzard games out to more people. Will it work? Well, I guess time will tell, as apparently Microsoft and Sony are still pretty far apart. Well, mostly Sony, as they don't necessarily want to sit down and hammer out an agreement as Microsoft continues to press them on. Apparently, Brad Smith just had a contract ready to go in his pocket while he was there doing the presentation. So I guess we'll see as we go along, but it's going to be harder and harder for Sony to continue opposing this deal as other companies are essentially backing off, with Nvidia being the latest saying, hey, we're good now that we're getting Call of Duty in these Activision games. So how long can Sony hold out? I guess we'll find out as we go along here, at least up until June, when Microsoft still expects to be able to close this deal. Next up, let's talk about the Pokemon Company and a big event that was announced, which we can see this over on Twitter, posted up by Pokemon, saying the next Pokemon Presents is on the way, trainers. Tune into our official YouTube channel at 6 a.m. Pacific on February 7th for about 20 minutes of exciting Pokemon news in celebration of Pokemon Day. So, as we all expected, this was going to happen. It's happened the last last 4 years now, and we're expecting a few things, mostly a spin-off, like a post-Pokemon mystery dungeon. That's really been heavily rumored and hinted at based on some of the code found on the website. But after that, DLC for Scarlet and Violet, as we have this massive patch that is incoming. We saw all the different notes, and yeah, it mentioned they were going to have less trainers or less NPCs and less Pokemon spawn in the world to fix crashing issues. And as for performance, I don't think they're going to mention it. I think the patch will get pushed, then people will look into it and they'll decide if, okay, the frame rate is better or not from here. But there were things in those patch notes apparently they couldn't reveal to us, most likely up until Pokemon Day on the 27th. My biggest hope, though, is that we do see some form of Nintendo Switch Online update for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance in the way of older Pokemon titles making its way to the service. I think it'd be a massive boost for NSO, and for a lot of people, that would be the big value that they need to push them over the edge to sign up just for the games, not even like the service of, oh, I can play online. The idea of having, we'll say Red and Blue go into Game Boy, and then you can pick a number of Game Boy Advance games, Sapphire and Ruby or something, going into the expansion tier with trading and battling online. I mean, there's a lot of content there just for those few games. And I have seen some people say that they probably wouldn't do that, just the concerns of exploiting those games, then moving them around on the Switch and somehow getting them to the current Pokemon games. But I feel like they can essentially sandbox a lot of that stuff in the Nintendo Switch Online applications for Game Boy and Game Boy Advance. So I'm very hopeful that we at least get Red, Blue, and Sapphire and Ruby. But hey, if anything, I'll take Pokemon Pinball. I mean, really, I would just like to see some sort of update here for NSO, all of that to tie together with some of the previous legacy Pokemon games, all the way up now to Scarlet and Violet with their big downloadable content that I'm sure will be showcased here quite a bit. And then otherwise, hey, Pokemon Sleep, what's going on there? Anyway, looking forward to hopefully a pretty jam-packed Pokemon Presents next week. Next up, let's talk about another big event to look forward to. This actually happening tomorrow. It's from Sony. It's a new State of Play. We can see this over on their Twitter account with the announcement, where they say State of Play is back. Tune in Thursday at 1 p.m. Pacific for 5 new PlayStation VR2 titles from partners, which this is exactly what I expected to be at this State of Play, like a day after the PSVR 2 officially launches and is being shipped out. Yeah, you want to start talking about more games and titles for that fairly expensive accessory, all things considered, with the PS5 actually being cheaper than the headset. Hot indie and third-party reveals, and an extended look at Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. I was not at all expecting that one to have Suicide Squad there, but hey, there you go. Not a bad idea to get a better look at a game coming out here in a couple of months now. In fact, if we take a look over on PlayStation Blog, they say settle in for more than 15 minutes of all new gameplay details and updates on Suicide Squad: Kill the Justice League. So we're going to have a fairly extended look at this game. Again, 1 p.m. Pacific, 4 p.m. Eastern Time. And of course, the Suicide Squad did have a bit of a leak, specifically on its release date, as pointed out by Wario64. GameStop listing it now with the release date of May 26th, which would place it just a couple of weeks after Zelda Tears of the Kingdom release. I saw some people mention that. It's like, oh, you're going to launch your game a week or two after this massive title from Nintendo. Well, yeah, they're not on the same platform at all. Like, Suicide Squad's not on the Switch. Zelda's not on the platforms. I think they'll be okay together in that month, especially since it's been a while since Rocksteady's released a game. And if anything, I need to see what they've spent their last, 7 years or so developing, even though I am a little down on Suicide Squad with all the talks about it being kind of a live service style game, but they're going to have quite a bit of time here to maybe win me over with some of the gameplay and different details that they'll share. As for other titles there, I mean, third party can be legitimately anything. I think it's still possible we see a Resident Evil 4 demo maybe get talked about or even just shadow dropped. And then for PSVR 2, my biggest hope is that Team Asobi is there, potentially with an Astrobot follow-up or just something new for the headset, as they are a studio with Sony who is heavily intertwined with a lot of the hardware side. So they'll make software that kind of shows it off a bit. And after what I saw with Astro's Playroom and them showing off things like the DualSense, be very curious to see what they can do with PSVR 2 and that new headset. But let me know what you're hoping to see here at Sony State of Play tomorrow. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about some new Game Pass games that were announced for the service to wrap up February and then get March started, which one game in particular I think is good to be going to this service because it didn't really seem to have the best launch. Might be a good way to get more eyes on the title. But first, we'll start with Atomic Heart. This over on news.xbox.com. That already out, of course, on cloud, console, and PC. Moving to February 28th, we have Merge and Blade, cloud, console, and PC. Soul Hackers 2, cloud, console, and PC. This is the title I'm talking about here because it came out, didn't do the best for Atlas, although they made a weird decision to not put it on the Switch, and you feel like with how well that platform's done in Japan and in the West, basically everywhere in the world, you feel like that would have at least helped it somewhat, but I think at least it going to a service like Game Pass will at least just get more people trying it out that maybe wouldn't have it in the past there. So there we go, Soul Hackers 2. F1 22, console and PC, this through EA Play, moving up to March 2nd. And then moving over to March 3rd, we have Wolong Fallen Dynasty, cloud, console, and PC. I'm pretty excited for Wolong Fallen Dynasty after playing through that kind of that network test they did. I think it controls really well, and it should be a lot of fun, especially, I'm sure, for Neo fans or Souls fans. And obviously, we also have that demo that's coming up. So overall, pretty good way to close out February with Atomic Heart, and then going up to Soul Hackers 2, and then starting out March with Wolong Fallen Dynasty. Certainly a lot of stuff to play right now on Game Pass. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're gonna take a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I ask, when do you think Call of Duty will make its return to Nintendo's system? 48% saying 2024, 23% saying 2025, 22% saying 2026, only 7% on 2023, and that makes sense because if that deal closes the latest in June, I mean, by then we'll already be hearing about Call of Duty and all of this, so it'll be a little late, I think, to get that port going, but 2024 makes the most sense because they are using the Switch user base currently as a big driving factor as getting more people to play Call of Duty and making it more accessible. But if they only develop for Nintendo's next generation platform in 2024, I mean, you're basically starting right out of the gate with a very limited number of people then with that install size starting from 0. So I think one way or the other, they're going to try to get it on the current Switch. And maybe they'll say, you know what, we'll get it there just through the cloud. And technically, it's still getting there, but it'd be very, very interesting to see how Microsoft and Activision Blizzard navigate this. Again, provided the deal goes through. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from SCJ saying, while GameStop's death has felt inevitable for the last 10 plus years, their closure inching closer does hit home for me a bit, as I'll never forget my friend's older brother taking me and my friend to midnight releases there for Halo 2 and COD 4 since he was old enough to purchase the games and we weren't. Some of my fondest memories as a kid were those midnight releases with friends, so it hits home for me, but I understand things change and don't last forever. It'd be a lot of fun in like 7 or 8 years when you got to explain to the younger generation what midnight releases were and what physical media was. Think about that for a minute. It's like, yeah, back then we used to trade games back and forth. You'd go to the store in person and there'd be games there. It's kind of like PC gaming now. Like if I tell people back in the day there'd be rows and rows of PC games, I mean, there's nice cardboard boxes and you take them home, you have to drop like 8 different CDs. Okay, now 2 or 3 CDs, and there was a CD key that you couldn't lose. They have no idea what I'm talking about. At one point, you got to explain to the young nephew that we used to have CRTs. Like there used to be this big box on the back of our TV. So it's gonna be a lot of fun explaining what midnight releases were, where you didn't hit a button to get your game in a couple of minutes. You had to go there, wait in line, maybe for hours, talk with a bunch of people, and then get your game, go home and play it for hours until the sun came up. It was a different world at that time, and The world changes as we go along, and gaming, it'll be very interesting to see what it looks like in 10 years or so. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Whereas Microsoft and Nintendo coming to an agreement for 10 years with Call of Duty. What do you think the strategy is for that? And when do you think the first Call of Duty game will show up on the Switch? And then also, what about Pokemon Presents or Sony State of Play? What are your best predictions for those events? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.